someone asked me, he has a tree in the garden, and the tree kind of landed there. Not as a tree, it was kind of, some seed fell there and it started growing into a tree. It's a big nuisance. The kids can't play because they're tripping over the roots, etc. It doesn't have any fruit, but he's told it's a wild cherry tree, and he sent me actually a stalk, a picture. Sorry, he sent me a picture of a stalk with an eaten up cherry pit. So he says that apparently the birds enjoy the fruit. So here the question is like this: we're very, very conscientious, and it was interesting. It was Bashgocha Protest. It was a couple of days ago, 3 days ago. It was in Shir Rambam. On that day, the issue of uprooting, of cutting down a fruit tree. And so in Gemara it says if the value for wood is more than the value for fruit, you're allowed to cut it down. And yet in Shulchan Aruch it brought down the Meforshim, very, very concerned that the Indian of cutting down a fruit tree could be a sakona for children, etc., causing a tragedy, etc. So we're very, very conscientious. Even where there is a loophole, la halacha, we're very conscientious about cutting down a fruit tree. The question here is, what if the fruit is not really edible? A lot of us, perhaps in London also, will have apple trees or pear trees, and the apples never really ripen. They're not really edible apples, unless you put a ton of sugar over them. So is that called a fruit tree? And the halacha is actually, I have a sefer called Shemiras Guf V'Nefesh. He specializes in this type of stuff, and he brings from poskim that even if it's the fruit is not edible unless you'd add sugar to it, it still is called a fruit tree, and one wouldn't be allowed to chop it down. So that on that count we weren't really okay. And wherever he never sees any fruit on it because the birds are eating it. When necessary, they say there would be, you'd sell the tree to a goy. That means the goy would give you some money, and he would be coin of the tree, and then he would cut down his own tree. That's the heter which is used, but it's used with reluctance. And the way the apostles say, you'd only use that when there are other grounds in addition to this heter. And there are other grounds also for being matir. So here, perhaps because the fruit may be inedible, so then, if necessary, one would be allowed to sell it to a goy, and then the goy cuts it down. But I'd say that with reluctance.
In Kfar Chabad, the Pardesim have a 15-year cycle for the trees.
Okay.
Because at the end of 15 years, they don't produce very good sroigim. So they basically have a cycle, and they cut down the pardas and replant.
Do they do it themselves, or do they get some Filipinos?
I don't know the details, but I know they do it.
Okay, so all right, so we've got some. We've got some homework to find out.
There's a prominent Satmar family in Stamford Hill who one of them had an apple tree in his garden, and it wasn't giving any fruit anymore, and it was in his way. And he went to the Rav and and told he's allowed to get a goy to take it out. They took it out, and after that, the whole family had nothing but sorrows. 2 of the brothers were nifta, and they had various other sorrows, which couldn't be explained. Okay. So there's obviously more to it than just the straight halacha.
Yes. So as I say, we are very conscientious about this. There's actually a letter of the Rebbe to someone, a Lubavitcher Rov, who had given a heter, and he associated repercussions later, negative repercussions he associated with this thing. And the Rebbe says to him, perhaps you should take on a hachlota, never to pass on this in the future. But
how about pruning? How about pruning the tree? Cut it back.
Also pruning the roots. I said you could also trim the roots.
Yeah,
that would be okay. You could, in other words, cut the extent of the roots and manage it that way.